Phil Mickelson just walked into the most important room in golf and said what nobody else had the guts to say in front of executives, on the record, straight to Brian Rolapp's face. The whole room erupted. Players who've been divided for years suddenly stand together because of one speech. Phil Mickelson, the guy everyone wrote off, the most controversial player in the game, just became the most powerful voice in it. What did he actually say? What did Rolap do? And where does the PGA Tour go from here? This changes everything, and we're breaking it all down right now. Subscribe if you haven't, because you do not want to miss what comes next. Before we get into what Phil said, you need to understand the temperature of the room he walked into, because this summit was not supposed to be a battleground. It was supposed to be a peace conference. Leadership and players sitting down like adults, sorting out the mess that the PGA Tour has become. That was the idea. That was the plan. But here's the reality. The PGA Tour right now is a powder keg with a lit fuse, and Brian Rolapp keeps handing people matches. Rory McIlroy, 6-time major champion, the man who stayed loyal while everyone else was boarding flights to Saudi Arabia, had just handed Rolap a 24-hour ultimatum. 24 hours to scrap the 2-track system, fix the broken FedEx Cup playoffs, and give players actual, real, meaningful power in decision-making. Not a courtesy seat at the table, not a checkbox consultation, real power. And Rolap's response? The same dismissive boardroom non-answer he always gives. 47 events, 230 players. More interesting, more competitive system, blah, blah, blah. The man speaks in press release language while the house is burning down around him. And it is not just Rory. 11 players boycotted the 3M Open over a surprise rule change that veteran Jim Furyk, a man who has been on tour for decades, said he did not even know existed. 11 players gone. A boycott. Over a rule nobody knew about. And the response from the suits? Everything is fine. Everything is under control. It is not fine. It has never been less fine. And every single person walking into that summit knew it. So Rolap walks in thinking he controls the room, his agenda, his timeline, his vision for 2028. He is the CEO. He is in charge. He is going to stand up, lay out the plan, and the players are going to nod along like they always do. And then Phil Mickelson stood up. Now I need you to really understand what it means that Phil Mickelson was even in that room. This is a man who got exiled, who burned every bridge so completely that people said he would never be welcomed back. He left for LIV Golf. He said things about tour leadership that had executives reaching for lawyers. He was the villain, the rebel, the cautionary tale they told young players about what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. And here he is, back in the room, and not just back in the room. He is the most dangerous man in it, because Phil did not come back empty-handed. He came back with receipts. He spent 2 years watching from the outside, seeing exactly how LIV operated, seeing exactly what the PGA Tour was doing wrong, seeing the whole picture from a perspective that nobody else in that building has ever had. And when he stood up at that microphone, every single person in that room felt it. He did not start hot. That is what made it terrifying. He started quiet, almost gentle, nostalgic. He talked about his career, about what the tour meant to him coming up, about the tournaments with history that fans traveled across the country to watch. He was warm. He was calm. Rolap was nodding. A few executives were smiling. They thought it was going to be a feel-good moment from a reformed rebel. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. Phil pivoted, and when Phil Mickelson pivots, you feel it in your chest. He looked directly at the leadership table, not the players, not the cameras, the leadership table, and he said what nobody with anything to lose has been willing to say out loud. He said the 2-track system is not restructured. It is a demolition. He said taking historic tournaments and calling them second tier is not organization. It is disrespect. It is spitting on the legacy of events that existed before half the people in that room were even born. He said the players did not grind for years, did not sacrifice their bodies and their families and their time just to be handed a system that was designed without a single one of them being asked a single question. And then, and this is where the room changed, Phil brought up the USGA. He brought up the 3M Open. He looked around that room and asked, loudly and clearly, how a governing body gets to make rules that the players who are supposed to follow them do not even know exist. How a tour can stand in front of cameras and claim to represent its players while locking them out of every room where the real decisions get made. How 11 professionals, men at the top of their sport, felt so disrespected, so ignored, so completely powerless that a boycott was the only language left available to them. You could hear a pin drop, and then Phil delivered the line that is going to be clipped and shared and quoted for years. He said, and I need you to hear every single word of this, when the players are not employees asking for a raise. They are the product. Without them, there is no tour. Without them, there are no television deals worth signing, no sponsorship checks worth cashing, no fans in those seats, no reason, not a single reason, for any of those executives to have a job. And it is time, it is well past time, for the people running this sport to start treating the people who are this sport like it. The room absolutely exploded. Players who had been sitting with their arms folded, grinding their teeth, holding it together on their feet. Guys who have disagreed with Phil Mickelson on everything for 4 years, standing up and applauding. Younger players who only know Lefty from highlight reels and dinner table legends. Kids who weren't even on tour during the LIV wars, on their feet. The applause was not a polite golf clap. It was pent-up rage finally finding somewhere to go. And Brian Rolapp looked like a man whose floor just collapsed underneath him. Now, before I get into Rolapp's response, because trust me, it is infuriating, I need to ask you something. If you are finding this breakdown valuable, if this is the kind of inside analysis that you cannot get anywhere else, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button. It takes 1 second, and it tells YouTube to push this video to every golf fan who needs to see it, and drop a comment, just one word, describing how you feel about what Phil just did. One word. I want to see them pile up. Now let's get back into it, because Rolap's reaction is something else entirely. Here is what Rolap did not account for. Phil is not just a rebel with a grudge anymore. Phil is something far more dangerous. He is a reformed rebel with credibility. He left. He saw the other side. He came back. And when a man who voluntarily walked away from everything, saw what life looked like without it, and chose to return anyway, stands up and tells you the house is broken, you do not get to dismiss him. You do not get to say he does not understand the big picture. He has seen the picture from outside the building. He is telling you the foundation has cracks, and everybody in that room heard it. The reactions leaking out of that summit are something else entirely. One veteran player, asking not to be named, told reporters it was the first time in years somebody in that room said exactly what needed to be said without calculating the political cost first, without worrying about relationships or board seats or whose ego might get bruised. Just the truth, raw and unfiltered. Another player said it felt like someone finally turned the lights on in a room where everyone had been stumbling around in the dark for years. These are not fringe voices. These are men who have been around long enough to know the difference between a moment that matters and one that fades. And they are telling you this one matters. And Rolap's response, careful, measured, absolutely maddening. He went right back to the script. 47 events, 230 players, more interesting, more competitive, the same talking points he has been recycling for months, but this time they landed like a wet towel on a cold floor, because Phil had already reframed the entire conversation, and now Rolap's carefully rehearsed answers sounded exactly like what they are. The words of a man who is not actually listening to a single thing the players are saying. A man reading from a teleprompter while the building burns. And you know who is absolutely loving every second of this. The LIV players. Every crack in the PGA Tour's foundation is a billboard for the Saudi League. Every public fight, every leaked frustration, every ultimatum is a live advertisement that says, come over here, we actually respect you. The 47 players who already left are watching this dumpster fire with popcorn in hand, and the ones still on the fence are taking very careful notes. Greg Norman does not even need a PR team right now. The PGA Tour is doing his recruiting for him. Now, here is what Phil actually changed beyond the spectacle of that moment. And this is the part that really matters, so stay with me. Rolap's entire strategy has been divided and conquered. Keep the players fragmented, deal with them individually, make Rory look like an outlier, make the boycotting players look like troublemakers, make Phil look like a bitter exile with a personal vendetta. That strategy only works if the players never find a unified voice. And Phil Mickelson just gave them one, loudly, publicly, in front of everyone. Think about what just happened here. You now have Phil Mickelson and Rory McIlroy, two men who have been on opposite sides of nearly every major argument in professional golf for 4 straight years, pointing in exactly the same direction. That is not a disgruntled minority anymore. That is not a couple of complainers the tour can brush aside. That is a coalition, a real one. And when a coalition forms around a CEO who has spent months dismissing everyone who questions him, that CEO's days of dismissing people without consequences are officially numbered. And here is something nobody is talking about enough. This was not just a moment of passion. Phil walked into that room with a strategy. He built his speech like a lawyer building a case. He started with nostalgia to disarm the room. He pivoted to specifics, the 2-track system, the USGA failures, the boycott, to establish credibility. And he closed with a philosophical hammer that nobody could argue with. You are nothing without the players. In one speech, he made Rolap's entire narrative collapse. And the terrifying thing for tour leadership is that Phil is just getting started. Here is the brutal truth that everyone in professional golf needs to hear right now. You cannot build a television product, a sponsorship product, a fan product around people who feel disrespected and powerless. It does not work. It has never worked in the history of professional sports, and the PGA Tour is about to learn that lesson in the most painful and public way possible. If someone in that building does not start genuinely listening, not pretending to listen, not scheduling a consultation and then doing whatever they were going to do anyway, actually listening, Phil Mickelson knows this better than anyone alive. He paid the price for his own mistakes in front of the entire world. But the understanding he carried back into that room, the understanding of what this sport is supposed to feel like, supposed to mean, supposed to be, that understanding was the single most powerful thing inside that building today. And Brian Rolapp had absolutely no answer for it. I do not know what comes out of this summit. I genuinely do not. I do not know if the 2-track system gets torn up. I do not know if Rory's ultimatum gets the answer it deserves. I do not know if Phil's speech becomes the moment golf historians point to 10 years from now as the day everything changed, or just another jaw-dropping flashpoint in a sport that keeps producing them and then doing nothing about them. But I know this. Something shifted today. The players found a voice, a real one, a fearless one that the boardroom cannot dismiss the way it has been dismissing everything else for the last 2 years. Professional golf is at a crossroads unlike anything it has faced before. LIV broke the economics. The USGA is hemorrhaging players' trust one bad rule at a time. The tour is at open war with its own biggest stars. And the fans, the real ones, the ones who show up in the rain and stay until the last putt drops, are watching all of this with a mixture of absolute fury and total fascination. Today, Phil Mickelson walked into the fire voluntarily and reminded everyone what this sport is actually supposed to stand for. Whether the people with the power to fix it are ready to listen, that question is going to define the next decade of professional golf, and we are going to be here covering every single second of it. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Phil's speech actually moves the needle? Or is this another moment of fireworks that the tour absorbs and ignores? Tell me below. I read every single one. And if you are not subscribed yet, seriously, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, smash that bell so you never miss a video, and share this with one golf fan who needs to see it. Because this story is nowhere near over. The next chapter is already being written. And trust me, you do not want to miss it. We will see you in the next one.